If you're hanging out on the north side of Houston, you've got to check out the Farm Drinkery. It's an awesome dive bar located in Spring off of Champions Forest in Louetta. They've got 22 beers on tap, which you know what that means. They are representing the H-Town beer scene. But that's not all. They got great food too. My personal recommendation is to try out the world-famous wings. But the only thing better than an awesome new dive bar is a beer and food discount. You heard it. Beering Ain't Easy podcast listeners can go in and give the code BeerNerd20 for 20% off your bill. That's BeerNerd20 for 20% off. Come for the great atmosphere and stay for the free high fives.
God damn, I need IPA.
This is Beering Ain't Easy, your podcast for beer humor, dad humor, and beer tastings from Texas and beyond. So crack one if you got one and turn it up.
Welcome to Beering Ain't Easy, Season 2, Episode 13, with Ryan and Drew.
All right, y'all, we are going to go into some territory that the Beering Ain't Easy podcast has never gone before. We're going to take a road on the supply chain train, find out where all the goods come from that go into the beer that you like to drink. So we got another special guest, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to introduce him.
I liked what happened last week. I think we need to start a new tradition of bringing people on the podcast that are smarter than we are. You know, it makes us sound so much more sophisticated. So today we're going to have a guy I've known for a long time. His name is also Ryan, so he's going to go by Leer on today's podcast.
I'm glad we're going to do that because I had a strict one Ryan limit on the podcast, so I'm glad that y'all figured this out ahead of time.
A lot of my friends have said the same thing to me. They have a strict one Ryan policy. So anyway, let's turn it over to Leer. Leer, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you work, and what you do for them?
What's up, guys? I'm excited to be on the podcast with you. So my name's Ryan Leer, clearly, and I work for a company based out of Shakopee, Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis, called BSG. I'm their full-time videographer, and coincidentally, today, 1 year ago, was when I applied for this job. So that was kind of a fun little nugget I discovered in my email today, just kind of looking back on my timeline with the company. But we're a company owned by Rahr Malting. If you've been to breweries, you've probably seen sacks of grain and malt, other products. Rahr Malting's one of the biggest malting companies in the world. And we're basically we were created to really bust into the craft brewing world of, supplying smaller breweries. And with the growth of the craft brewing industry in the last decade, we've really grown alongside and I've been at it for a while. But yeah, I've been with the company for a year and just doing everything video for the marketing department.
Glad that you could be celebrating your 1 year anniversary with us today. Priorities.
Drew, I think you have a little bit of competition on the podcast tonight of your homebrewing skills. Leer, I know you used to homebrew. Do you still do that?
The last time I brewed was June 2021. My wife and I, our son will be 7 months. It puts a huge damper on your weekend time availability. But once it gets warm out, he's getting a little bigger. You can strap him on the chest, and he's a little bit more tolerant to activity. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to brew soon once the Minnesota weather warms up a little bit.
So he's really going to have a front row seat to the brewing process, huh?
Just won't get too close to the kettle.
Yeah, I thought you were going with that. In no time he'll be brewing with you, and I was like, all right.
In no time he'll be brewing? Actually brewing.
So how many breweries have you brought your son to?
I think the count, it's only three. No, two. Two breweries so far. He was really tiny the first time, and then a coworker has a brewery in Minneapolis that we stopped in for their 1 year anniversary a couple weeks ago. He's it's going along with kind of his tolerance for public spaces right now. So I think we'll kind of open it up. And, COVID obviously playing a little safe. But now I think we're about ready to roll.
So before we get too deep there, you guys want to talk about what beers we're drinking? Go around the horn?
Oh, yeah, I'm thirsty. Let's do it.
I'll go ahead and get started. I got some beer mail in, and so this one was interesting. I wanted to try it. It's from Southern Tier Brewing Company in Lakewood, New York. It is the Blackwater Series Nitro Coconut Truffle Imperial Milk Stout.
All right, someone's coming in hot tonight.
Dude, I was educated recently on the proper way to pour a nitro stout, and I did not realize you just dump the whole son of a bitch over and just let it cascade, and that just was life-changing for me. So here's to that.
Dump it on the ground, you mop it up, and then you squeeze it out.
Ooh, can't even talk with that noise going on in the background.
Go ahead, Ryan. Can you follow that?
So, as I say, can't talk, I'm going to start talking. I'm actually drinking a collaboration between Parish Brewing and Weldwerks called Candy Clouds. Calling it a hazy IPA would be underselling it a little bit. This is a beer brewed with a mix of their house hazy yeast and some white wine yeast. And they dry hop it a couple times with some New Zealand hops. And they also, at the beginning of fermentation, they spike it with some wine juice. So the vibe I get is basically a hazy white wine hybrid. So pretty interested to try this one out. Leer, what you got over there?
All right, I'll segue to play off of Ryan a little bit. Actually, I was going to go with the other one, but we're on a cloud theme apparently tonight. One of the names of the two beers I have is Little Black Rain Cloud. I went full BSG with my beer selection tonight, so the marketing department is involved with these two beers. Our social media coordinator, Abby, did this beer as a collaboration with a couple of local Minneapolis or Minnesota breweries. It's 11.1% Scotch barrel-aged wee heavy. I actually went to just a barrel pull of this months ago, probably 4 months ago, to taste it, see where it was at. This was a charity brew where a portion of the proceeds went to the charity Brew with Heart for children hospitalized to help pay some bills. Her sister unfortunately passed away in 1987 of a congenital heart defect when she was 2.5 years old. And this was a dedication to her sister. Her sister loved Winnie the Pooh. So there's a little tiny Winnie the Pooh on a balloon in this label that she actually designed herself to some watercolors, which is really cool. The other one is another coworker of mine, Juno Choi, is a co-owner of a brewery in Minneapolis, Arbeiter. It's called Dip Check, and it's a reference to Minnesota hockey. It's a cold IPA, 6.7%, and it was dip hopped. Have you ever heard of dip hopping?
No, I haven't.
I have not.
So dip hopping is this is what happens when you work in the beer industry. Potentially maximize biotransformation in hops. So the idea is that you add hops to the empty fermenter while it's in mid-boil, and then you add a bit of wort to that, and it sits and will kind of make a hop tea. And then once you're done brewing, you send everything back into the fermenter and kind of is supposed to add a bit more hop character to your beer. So let me crack that one. Let's see how we do. Have you guys discovered a way to actually open a crowler without getting splashed in the face yet?
I was more thinking you were headed for that first pour out of a crowler and not spilling it everywhere and having it run down the side.
There we go.
Well, I think Leer wins with the beer choices.
Yeah. I was like sitting here like enjoying the pillow top head on my stout over here, but I think Lear's got the winning choice.
So you said you do video stuff for BSG. You want to walk us through a little bit about what you did before you worked for them?
So basically, my career in videography, I graduated college 2010. I worked for out of Duluth, Minnesota. I worked for a small a medical device company for a couple of years, and then moved back down to the Twin Cities, and almost immediately got a job with, of all things, a summer wrestling camp company. The owner of the company is a Hall of Fame wrestling coach. He was coached at the University of Minnesota for over 20 years, and he's in, dozens of Hall of Fames, and he's super dedicated to his camp system. I just did full-time videography for him year round and did a lot of traveling. So it actually gave me a lot of opportunity to check out a lot of breweries along the way in different cities, East Coast, West Coast. Made it to Canada once too.
Yeah, I've seen some of these videos. Host Ryan has shown me the videos, and they're pretty badass. So I'm waiting for that time when you can make us our official Beering and Easy intro. But, I kind of want to go for like maybe James Bond theme or superhero. I'm not sure what I want to go with yet, but I don't know. Host Ryan, if you have any ideas there.
I'm still trying to get out of the old wrestling mindset of things. I've been having, the brewers do push-ups, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to stop.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we could go with the Beer and Easy wrestling theme here. All right. Before we get too far into the BSG stuff, I gotta bring up a topic. So, Leer, I'm glad to hear that you're a new dad. So this is a dad friendly podcast. So I want to hear your thoughts on this new purchase that host Ryan had just made. I'd call it like a suburbia status symbol purchase. I don't know if he's shared this information with you yet. Ryan, would you like to tell the listeners what you just purchased?
I haven't shared this information with anyone outside my immediate family.
Then what better way than put it on the air at the Beer and Easy podcast?
So 2 days ago, I happened to take delivery of a certain recreational vehicle for getting around suburban neighborhoods.
Classic. It's a tracker.
Yeah.
It's a tiny tracker.
Yes, I wish. Yeah, we got a golf cart. So that's my full. I went into the burbs hard, and I'm still making that conversion hard.
Is there a theme? Are you going to pimp it out?
It
Just
came pretty
green.
well pimped out. I mean, it's got speakers, Bluetooth speaker sound system in it. So you better believe we're driving around the neighborhood blasting Encanto, just like going all in on it.
I imagine you can't drive with beer in hand. Can you, or can you?
I haven't tried yet. Although in our neighborhood, you're not supposed to drive on sidewalks or just not in the street in general. And I didn't want to drive on a particular street going to visit my brother-in-law. And the first night we had it, and I was driving it down the sidewalk to miss a certain part of the road, and a sheriff's deputy drove by, but he didn't stop me or say anything. So I've gotten away with one already.
So the question, oh, look at that.
Oh, man.
A 4-seater. So Lear, the question for you, I'm not sure if you're living that suburban life yet, but when you see someone that you knew pretty well, like Ryan, go out and buy something like this, does that make you excited for what's to come for you as you work your way up through, fatherhood, or does it make you want to run away screaming?
When I start making the big bucks out in Hollywood, I'm going to get a bigger and better golf cart than Ryan for sure. I'm not going to take the street or the sidewalks. I'm going to drive straight through everybody's yards. Yep.
Nice. All right, Ryan, you want to get us back on track?
Yeah. So to bring it back, not on the rails, but back towards the rails, we'll say. All right. So to recap, Lear was a home brewer, hasn't in a while, but you're a home brewer. You've always done video production as a job. And now here you are doing video production for a brewing supply company. Tell us how those two kind of came together and how that all went down.
I'll take you back to 2017. I went back in my emails to kind of figure out, because I could actually put a pinpoint on when all of this kind of started, at least with BSG professionally and hobby-wise. So I'd been a home brewer from now till in the back. I've probably been a home brewer for 12 years now. I've been all graining probably 11 years of that. So I switched over pretty quickly. And there's local homebrew stores in Minneapolis. A lot of you guys have probably heard, listeners have probably heard of Northern Brewer in some capacity. They're one of the bigger ones, I think, around the United States in shipping. So they have a local storefront, brick and mortar. So I would get my ingredients from them and eventually switch to buying bulk bags. And Rahr was the cheapest malt that I could buy because it's local. I think they have good kind of contracts with Northern Brewer, but I still wanted it cheaper. I'm like, how can I get it cheaper? So funny story, I end up going and finding out where I could buy Rahr malt. I didn't know this previously, and I found BSG, and I emailed sales at BSG. Hey, I'm a home brewer. I was wondering if I could, buy like, a small quantity of malt, just so I can save a couple bucks. And clearly, classically, didn't get a response whatsoever. But fast forward, 5 years later, I found the email that I wrote that day, and I'm not surprised that I didn't get a response. Like, this guy's pretty big up in sales from what I understand now. So that's pretty funny. I was talking to a coworker about that today, but that pretty much started my understanding of what BSG was. So I would kind of troll their careers page every now and then, probably once every 6 months. I'd just check in to see if there was anything creative available, like a design job or something like that. And, nothing popped up. And I was continuing to work for the wrestling camp company here and there. And then 2020 comes along, March, April, and then about April, May, wrestling is, the most intimate sport there is. So that was pretty much the first thing to go. Looking into our summer camp season starts in June, and we had to cancel all our camps. And the owners of our company were a small company of about 7 full-time employees. It was heartbreaking, but, they had to pull the trigger and let us go. So I spent a year unemployed, kind of looking for jobs here and there. And then, holy shit, I'm getting geared up for an interview at about 3:00 in the afternoon, and I'm on Indeed, and this job is there. It says BSG videographer. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? So I'm freaking out. Just about had a heart attack. I had about 2 hours before this other interview, and I'm just scrambling to get my cover letter written and figured out. All I did, I think, was change the thing, like the title of the job and the company, and that's all I could do is just mention that I was a home brewer and had some knowledge in the brewing world. And about 3 hours later, I got an email saying, hey, we'd like to set up an interview. And that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted, just to talk their ear off about brewing and videography. And kind of the rest is history there. So the interview process was pretty funny too. Like I said, anybody who's familiar with Northern Brewer maybe knows what Brewing TV is on YouTube. It's multi-episode series that went on for a few years, just a YouTube channel of a couple of hosts, Michael Dawson, Jake Keeler, Chip Walton was the videographer. They're all local out of Minneapolis. And I got to go to, Michael Dawson wrote a homebrew recipe book, and I went to his book signing at a brewery back in 2018 or something like that. And he signed my book, good luck in Ryan, good luck in your home brewing adventures, Michael Dawson, and kind of held on to that. And then I get a call from HR saying, hey, we're going to set you up on this interview with Michael Dawson and Jake Keeler. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I had to pretend my whole interview like I'd never heard of Michael Dawson before. And then long story short, I get into my first marketing meeting with the team, and I busted out the book, and I think Michael Dawson just couldn't quite contain himself. I think he was shocked. He was like, what just happened? But that was a pretty good story leading into, how I ended up with BSG.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how that all comes together, but that's super cool.
So does BSG, like, are y'all actually growing anything like with farmers, or are you buying stuff from farmers and then sending it out? Like where do you guys fit into that whole thing?
So my understanding of the malt side is that with Rahr, we contract with farmers. We get the malt from the farmers. It's graded and everything, and it has to pass a pretty extensive quality control check. And we have on-site labs for all of that. Once it goes into the malting facilities, we do all the malting. We end up blending, depending on if there's a company that we're working with that needs a specific, diastatic power of their grain and all of that. And that's just on the malt side. We also we own a malting company that's based out of Canada called Gambrinus. They do more specialty, smaller batches. And then we work with some of the biggest European malting companies, and there are like Weyermann is a massive German malting company. But then on the other kind of raw material side, hops, are huge. We have a whole division. We have a headquarters out in Yakima, Washington, a huge facility that we process hops, where we'll contract with farmers. They'll do all the harvesting, and then we'll get bales brought to our facility of just compressed. I think they're 200-pound big rectangular bales of hops that are just compressed. And then we break them down and then process them into the pellets that you're familiar with on whether you're homebrew or brewing scale. So that's basically that. Then we package them, ship them out in, varying quantities, size, weights. Yeah.
So as videographer, do you get to go out to where they're growing the hops, or are you like mainly looking at it when you get to that processing point? Like, I know I've seen a few videos, but I'm curious, like, where do you get to travel? What are you trying to highlight? So
specifically for hops, it's kind of cool. Like there's different windows, right? So there's not a lot of action during the summer or the spring when the hops are growing. They just look like hops in a field. And then when harvest time, that's when shit kicks in hardcore, right? The farms are out. It's wild. So I was lucky enough that they sent me out this year to hop harvest out in Yakima. And that was like just the sickest experience ever. It was super wild. Like there's trucks just ripping down the highway with big, like just hops flying off the back of their trucks, just trying to get back to their own. So each of the farms have their own processing facility too, where they strip all the cones off the bines and then and all the leaf matter. And so I went out there. It was a little bit short notice, and our hops guy at the time said, and we kind of talked about it. It was like, we need to get a drone out there. Like that would be a huge miss if we didn't do that. So I had about a week and a half to study for the commercial drone licensing thing through the FAA. It was all just YouTube, Google, a few practice tests that I was able to like scrounge up from the internet, and I was able to pass. It wasn't just squeak by, but it was unnerving just pressing send on that one. It's like I would have gotten a lot of footage on the ground and a lot of quality footage on the ground, but we just bought this $1,200 drone, which isn't that expensive, but we need to put the drone up in the air and not retroactively get the license later on. I wanted to do it right. So it worked out, and we got some sick shots out there. But yeah, the Yakima experience, like it smelled just it's so rich, just the richest Lupulin aroma ever. It's wild.
Nice. Is that your favorite smell, or do you like the smell of the wort, or what's your favorite smell?
Well, I think like anybody who homebrews feels a little bit of pride when they walk by a brewery and they're like, yeah, they're brewing today. You get a little bit like, yeah, they're brewing. But after that trip though, there's nothing really that could beat that. Speaking on like kind of the aroma and the smell, one of the coolest stories when I was out there that I'll never forget this. There's multiple bars out there. We went to a bar that had, probably 40 beers on tap. One of the beers was a Citra wet hopped, and it's easy to find wet hop beers out there. They just have to basically walk them over to the brewery. And it was a Citra wet hop beer, and the hop facility, the hop farm that I was at that day was processing Citra hops. And I'm sitting in there just getting smashed in the face by swinging hop binds that are hung up on these hooks, and there's leaves hitting me in the eyes, and just like I'm covered in hop matter. There's just like a thin film of lupulin all over my body. So, and I had to live like that all day, which, wasn't a bad thing at all. But we get to this place later on at night, and from what I'd smelled of myself the entire day, I'm like, I'm going to have this Citra beer, the same hop that they were processing that day. The beer tasted exactly like what I smelled like. It was amazing.
Do you have allergies?
No.
I'm curious if that would make your allergies flare up or not.
I bet it would destroy you.
Yeah, I kind of wonder with legalization of marijuana in states like Washington if there's like a fight over farmland for the different crops.
Well, I Googled it, and Yakima is best known for their apples. And I saw what else did I see growing? A lot of, it was amazing. There was so many other like kind of fruit farms kind of on the way out there from the airport. I was like, I don't see any hops. This is like, a ton of wineries, a ton of grapes in the region too. But yeah, just like a little pocket. But also I learned that Yakima grows and produces 75% of America's hops. Just that county. It's wild.
Wow. Damn. Man, I feel like everything grows on the West Coast. Like there's like literally nothing that you can't get to grow properly out there.
So as far as BSG's distribution goes, is there any place or any company that's been kind of wild that you've seen that you guys have sold products to? What prompted this question is during my lunch hours at work, I watch like a whole bunch of YouTube videos all the time. And there's a cooking YouTube channel, and the dude always uses, I forgot what the chemical is, but he uses something when he makes any kind of his bread or his buns or loaves or anything. It's some thing, and he always says what it is, and he holds it up, and it's got a BSG logo on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like amylase or something. I forgot what it is.
I was preparing for a question similar. It was like I was trying to find the most odd ingredient or thing that we have in our. I think it kind of stems from Rahr as a whole, the company that owns us. It's pretty wild. They own a bunch of different other subsidiaries. One of which is a tomato company called Bushel Boy. They recently acquired them within the last few years. So we have strawberries and tomatoes in our portfolio, which is pretty cool. We have Bevy is another company of ours. If you've ever heard of the Grainfather with homebrewing, it's kind of an automated 1-unit system. That's something that Bevy produces. And yeah, and another thing about Rahr is that we're coming up on our 175th anniversary this year. So Rahr Malting started as a brewery, and then they realized that they were better at malting their own grain than they were at brewing. So they kind of pivoted there, and then began selling their malt to other breweries in the region, and established relationships with some of the big breweries that still exist today that made it through Prohibition and all of that. Yeah.
So look out for tomato fruited beer coming your way.
Probably lots of strawberries and lots of tomato rind fruited. Yes.
I mean, why not? I mean, we've thrown everything else in a beer. Let's just.
Is it a fruit or a vegetable beer though?
I think this is a trick question. I think technically tomato is a fruit.
Would you put that in a fruited sour? I mean,
is that foreshadowing for an upcoming episode?
We're going to blend one in. I mean, I feel like you could just throw that shit in a blender and just go to town.
Drew, I saw you cracking into another beer. How was that first beer, and what are you drinking now?
Man, the loyal listeners will know that I'm a fan of coconut, and this coconut stout did not disappoint. It was 10% alcohol, so it was, I was just drinking a milk stout from Saloon Door. They got their Tasty AF and Nitro, which is great. It's a little lighter. This one's a little heavier and boozier, but man, the chocolate and coconut, it's a fantastic stout. Highly recommend it. Oh, and what I cracked into, I took a trip to San Antonio, and I came home with just a random assortment of San Antonio beers, and this is a Alamo beer, and it's called Davy Bockett, and it's a Helles Bock, which I expected a Bock to be like a dark brown color, but this is, super golden, and the nose is almost, it's almost got like a Saison nose on it. It's really interesting. I like it.
Lear, how was your first beer?
Arbeiter doesn't disappoint. They really focus on the German style of beer, although IPA isn't traditionally a German style, but it's, as it says in the description, it's brilliantly clear. It's insanely clear. But I think it's definitely got that lager kind of backbone to it. You can tell that it's super clean. It may be filtered, maybe, but it tastes insanely clean. Good hop aroma. Yeah, it's really solid.
Well, since you guys asked, I'll say Candy Clouds was also good. It wasn't as punch you in the face white wine as I expected. I was a little nervous. I've had a beer wine hybrid before, and it was like very forward with the wine. And I'm not a huge wine guy, so it wasn't great. But this one had like that sweetness and kind of like finish, like it kind of finished on a sweet note, but you could still taste the hops, and it was a lot more balanced than I was expecting. So I was very impressed. So the next one I'm cracking into here is False Idol, a hazy IPA from up in Dallas, courtesy of last week's guest Wes. So
was this like one of the runners up on the Dallas beers?
It was one of the ones that he was getting while he was running around, but it didn't make the cut for the episode.
It didn't make the cut. All right, so we've been talking a lot about beer, but there's another side to Leer here, which is his like history of photography. Like, what's the weirdest thing you had to film when it comes to wrestling? Because I feel like there could be some interesting moments that you had to catch on camera. Were there any that stick out to you as the funniest thing you ever had to film?
It makes me so sad just to hear that question. So basically, we go on the road, and our flagship product, our flagship camp is the intensive camp. So it's a very, very extremely hard, difficult camp. There's a trophy in the end called the I Did It shirt. Every kid gets points throughout the camp. They work their ass off. And if they don't, then you don't get the shirt. So the kids are motivated. I was there for 8 years. I learned just to stay away from the mismatches for the most part, right? There's a really good kid against a kid that, hasn't been in the sport very long. One day, I'm filming kid one way, and the kid behind me goes, "Hey, camera guy." And I sort of slowly turn my head, and he makes eye contact with me, and he has a kid locked up, clearly mismatched, and he's asking me to film this throw. And I don't know why I did it, but I sort of reluctantly just turned around and was just like, okay, do your thing. And this kid launches it. The kid didn't get hurt, but he just launches this kid. It was totally unfair. But that was just like, I felt so bad for the kid.
So did you see kids that like wanted to be in the WWE, like professional wrestling, where they'd come out with like playing their theme song when they came out? Did you get anybody like that and like start kissing biceps like Big Papa Pup?
There were characters like that. the counselors and myself, I mean, some of these counselors have become my best friend over the years. You spend 66 days with them, and, it's like family being on the road with these guys. But like, there's kids like that, and you typically don't like those kids. They just call too much attention to themselves. They're too much to deal with. Just shut up and do your thing. Get your shirt and move on.
Nice.
Early on in this episode, you talked about the ability with that camp to travel around the country and go to a bunch of breweries and stuff. Do you want to touch on some of the places you've been able to go on, some treks, and some of the experiences you've been able to have visiting breweries?
Sure. So our main we have 4 camps that put me on the West Coast. Typically, it was in Oregon, which is not a bad place to hang out if you're trying to visit breweries. So Southern Oregon was one of the towns. Ashland, there were 2 breweries there. Standing Stone, I think, was the one brewery that was a little bit kind of a bigger restaurant style brewery. And then there was Caldera that was like in the basement, just awesome, chill. Didn't have the best beer, but you just love visiting them because they just like, you could walk downtown, and Ashland, Oregon was the biggest hippie town on earth. It was like just so cool to be there. But then, so on the West Coast, eventually we were in camps in the kind of northern Oregon. It put us close to Portland. So took a trip to Portland, took a trip to Bend. So I saw some, I pretty much did Oregon right from camp. And then on the East Coast, we were in Pennsylvania, so it wasn't too far from Niagara Falls and Toronto, so I took a solo trip up to Toronto for a weekend, and there's like 20-some breweries in Toronto, and it was cool talking to the locals there about just how big the boom was there. Surprisingly, Boise, Idaho has about 15 breweries or so. We were just outside Boise for one camp. Interviewed some kids in Philadelphia and head down Rehoboth Beach to Dogfish Head. Was an awesome trip. Yeah, it was just cool. Like, I'd get my stuff done, finish up practice, and rent a car and bolt out and see some breweries on these trips.
So you've clearly been around and been to a ton of breweries. Is there any one or two or a couple in particular that you'd say are your favorites or that you're particularly fond of?
One of my favorite brewing experiences was when I was in Oregon, took a solo trip to Bend, rented a bicycle, went around, and everybody kept talking about Crux Brewing at Sunset. That was one of the best brewing experiences I've ever had. It was perfect sunset. You had the mountains in the background. They basically have a sunset happy hour where within 30 minutes of sunset and an hour after or something, it's half off beers. But back then they had barrel aged everything. It was nuts. Their beer list was insane. And I went back 4 years later with my wife, and things change. It was still a nice experience. We saw the sunset, but man, like, I have a kid myself. I've wanted a kid forever, but oh my gosh, like, just kids running crazy. Like, they have, the bags boards, and it's nuts. And the saddest thing is just no barrel beer. Like, the demand and the supply is so slim. They just, like, you run out of the time to brew beers for the barrel. And, but I mean, Crux Brewing is one that stands out no matter what. Like, that'll just have a place.
So Leer, like, I got to ask you this question. So you've gotten into this industry that is a lot of the behind the scenes part of the brewing industry. We all just go in, we get our beer. We don't know all the shit that's going on behind the scenes. What's the most interesting thing that you've learned from working for a company like this that, like, your average beer drinker would, like, have no idea or no respect for, like, how it got there?
I know. I was like, that was like the main question I was kind of just pondering, thinking about this was just, and the only real answer that I had is just how big it is. Like, the industry is just so massive, you can't even put, like, your finger on it. And it's constantly moving, constantly innovating. People are trying to come up with new ways to ferment things faster. Sustainability, there's just a massive focus right now on sustainability, trying to do things quicker, not cheaper, but just like more efficient. I just think that's where the industry is going right now, is just to be as sustainable as you possibly can.
To be sustainable and to make like some wacky hybrid cryo hop blends that just so someone could throw experimental hop number 39 on this beer. You know?
Innovation in the industry, I think, is top three, right? Like, who would have thought seltzers would lead all categories it would destroy beer. Like, breweries have to make seltzers.
It's all about the profit margin, man. It's so cheap to make, and you can sell it for the same price. Like, it's all about that profit margin.
My coworker jokes about glitter beer all the time. They had glitter beer at CBC, but it was the first to get cashed.
So, I mean, obviously, part of that is the explosive growth of seltzer and also piggybacking off the sustainability thing. Is craft beer, from your guys' view, is it still going through like explosive growth, or do you think it's plateauing, or kind of what's the trajectory that you guys are seeing?
I guess if there's any, like, the biggest insight probably, and the biggest surprise, was that the numbers trended upward throughout COVID, no matter what. You know, people couldn't come to the tap rooms, but people were still buying beer. Breweries were still brewing beer, and our ingredients were still going out the door to all these places, like in the black, like big numbers, sales.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I thought for sure it would have contracted during COVID.
Well, I think a lot of us did our part to drink a lot of beer during the COVID outbreak. So I feel like I personally have helped a lot of these industries. So
I'll say this podcast wouldn't be here without COVID, right?
Yeah, no joke. Oh man.
Well, shit. What's your future look like, Leer? What's your career ambitions? What are you trying to do?
Right now, having a full-time job, raising a little guy. That's my main goal at this point. Just trying to create some cool content for BSG down the road. Who knows?
Is there anything is there any place that we should send our listeners to go to see some of your work?
So I'll just point you to all our socials. BSG Instagram, BSG Craft is the handle for all of these. Facebook, YouTube. If you want to see hopefully some cool beer content, we got a couple of pieces that came out recently and a couple that are coming up. So
there you go.
There you have it, folks. That is Ryan Leer, the Hop Paparazzi.
Check out MTKA State Champs on YouTube for some of his old school work.
Yeah, there you go. Bring out the old school.
I'm sure Ryan was expecting me to say that in the first place. Yeah. Hey, just Google hoverboard costume #1.
So, Leer, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. This has been awesome to have you. I've learned a lot, and definitely want to have you back on here at some point.
Yeah, you bet. I'm looking forward to coming back, and we'll come up with some cool bits.
Heck yeah, Ryan, you want to take us home?
Yeah, look out for BSG's upcoming collaboration with their tomato stout coming out maybe 2023. We'll see.
You down with BSG? Yeah, you know me. This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production out of Houston, Texas. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook, or at our website at crossthestreamsmedia.com, where you can find our podcast and all the other great sister podcasts on our network.
This has been a Cross the Streams Media Podcast.